is welcomed in a city like Toronto, and he says this is not the city that he knows and loves. We will be speaking with him again at some point, I'm sure, over the next 24 to 36 hours. I want to bring Stephanie Smythe in now for a look at, now this is what we call real live television, Steph, as we are repositioning some of our cameras, but we are on the ground, we are there. Now we see what look like the two burned out shells, if you will, of two police cars. Fire still on scene. This is at King and Bay. What new information have you?
Well, Anne, we've confirmed that the Delta Chelsea Hotel is now in lockdown, as well as the Sheridan Centre, as well as the Toronto Eaton Centre. All those areas and buildings under lockdown right now. We heard that possibly some of the protesters are in the Yonge and Dundas area. We're keeping a close eye on that. No reports of any more cars on fire, any other situations like that. And we're
any other injury reports? Now, we have heard, and you've been able to confirm through EMS, we've got 3 injuries, protesters apparently.
We did have that confirmed from Toronto EMS and from Toronto Police and Wendy Drummond with the Integrated Security Unit that there are injuries. 3 from Toronto, or from the Toronto EMS, head injuries, and that happened a while back when we had the riot police holding back the crowd at Queen and John as we witnessed things being thrown into the crowd. And we know that these protesters were hurling rocks at windows, cars, you name it. We heard that golf balls were being tossed into the street. And a source, a friend of mine, told me that with the police, that protesters will hurl golf balls and things on the ground, trying to trip up the mounted unit horses. That's what they're, hoping to do in that scenario. But they're also using them at cars and at windows and Starbucks. 2 Starbucks taking a hit, as we understand it. And so this is continuing in downtown Toronto, but we're trying to get a handle on where this group is going next. Here's some of the damage you can see from one of our cameras to the Starbucks just across the street from our building here at Queen and John. And we had them live on tape, smashing windows at the Scotiabank
but
as
the
well.
black bloc covering their faces and wearing similar, I believe that's their intention, to not be recognized as they're moving forward in a very violent way today, a peaceful protest that has turned completely ugly and violent. And again, just confirming reports that you have just said, Stephanie, that the Delta Chelsea is in lockdown, the Sheridan is in lockdown, the Eaton Centre is in lockdown, subway service south of Bloor University and Yonge Line, no service, no shuttle buses, GO Transit is not coming into the downtown core, and it appears that many of the leaders have arrived here in the city of Toronto, and this is what they have arrived to see.
Now, and we're getting word from our crew with Craig Keelbrewer that protesters heading up Victoria Street to Dundas. So that's just east of Yonge Street and south of Dundas. We're also seeing on Twitter some reports that possibly the security fence has been breached down around south of King. Now, that's not confirmed at all, and I don't necessarily find that, I do find that hard to believe, Anne. We've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter, and we can't trust it all. We just take a look at it and try to confirm with police if in fact that is happening. So we don't know that for sure.
And of course that call's going into Wendy Drummond to find out whether that has been, and information like that, if it is, whether it's unconfirmed or confirmed, is something that you really just don't want to, I'm just hearing Katie Simpson's confirming something.
Oh no, she was confirming, sorry, and that, confirming that Toronto General Hospital is now in lockdown as well, Anne.
Okay.
Which is not unusual. We saw Mount Sinai go into lockdown yesterday when the protesters were heading south on University in the protest then. It's just a hold and secure situation. Now, okay, let's go to George Lagerjanis now live, Anne, at, I believe we're near Yonge and Dundas. Where is this?
Are we here? Are we live?
You're live, George.
Yes, thank you. We're at the corner of Adelaide and Bay. I'm just going to pan this camera and move it, zoom it a little bit in to see where the line of police is being held back now. I'm not sure if this is exactly where it's happening. Should I be? Okay, let me just tilt down, folks. Let me secure this shot and get a focus on you. Okay, you can see now the crowd that was at the corner of Adelaide and Bay started to go to the east. And now they're being sort of held back by police. Now, I know we heard just from you a moment ago, Stephanie, that crowds were making their way possibly towards Eaton Centre. This group has started to breach the area that was where the police car had been burned, and they're now starting to move east. That's what I can tell you from here. And we've heard a lot of reports of places being shut down in this neighborhood, the Delta Chelsea, the Sheraton, the Eaton Center, Opera House. You know, it's almost quaint. We've seen some signs out here that said end poverty and water isn't a commodity. Yet we're seeing crowds act very violently out here, at least in this part of the city today. Now, we pulled up on this. It looked a lot more dramatic when we pulled up here. Right now, it just seems more like a bottleneck. We'll continue to keep you informed on what's happening here, just a block away from where a police vehicle is still smoldering in the distance. Back to you.
And George, is this, it's Ann Romer now, can you make out the crowd? Are they onlookers? Are they, you know, people just gathering to see what the heck is going on? Are the
it's hard to say
protesters in the center of this?
Yeah, it's hard to say, and I can't really tell you. I'd just be speculating at this point. We've been inside this breaking news vehicle for safety reasons.
Yes.
And we've been warned by police a couple of times now, too, that if these crowds start to rush back because canisters are being thrown at them, they're going to push them back.
And what is it that they are looking at? What are they crowding around?
Now, as you can see, the crowd's actually starting to move back towards Bay and the intersection of Bay and going south on Bay, possibly back towards that burning vehicle. So obviously police were able to keep them from going further east. And as you can see, they're en masse now, starting to go back towards where the burning vehicle was. Let me see if I can zoom in for you. Whoops.
All right, Georgie.
Sorry, it's been a while since I've operated one of these cameras. Now, let me tilt up, and now, as you can see, the crowds are going south on Bay again.
You're doing brilliantly. Thanks, George. Stand by. Stephanie Smythe has something new for us. Steph, what have you got?
We're learning from our crews and at CTV that 40 College Street is now in lockdown. And 40 College, we all know that address is Toronto Police Headquarters.
Yes.
So Toronto Police Headquarters in lockdown right now. We're also hearing reports of bricks being used to smash windows at Yonge and College, Ann. And they've also smashed the info booth at Yonge and Dundas Square. So they seem to be all over and destroying things in their wake or in their path and moving along. So it seems to be and now we're hearing that vans filled with police have now stopped at Dundas before they unload. That's from our crew with Craig Kielberger right now, Ann. So they're on the move. They're using what they can to smash windows. They're continuing and forcing things in all kinds of buildings into lockdown. The Toronto Eaton Centre, the Delta Chelsea Hotel, the Sheraton Hotel, Toronto General Hospital, and now Toronto Police Headquarters, Ann.
And as you said, you're getting reports that in the Yonge College, Yonge Carleton area, they changed names at that particular spot, that there are windows being smashed. There is a Shoppers Drug Mart on the northeast corner. There are elegant shops a little bit south at College Park. It's quite a busy area. Also a lot of condominiums as well. Any word of condos being locked down?
Not that we've heard of yet, Ann. Not any word, but I would imagine that everything police and people in general are very aware of what's going on in the city right now, and so I would imagine that lockdown is the common word right now. Just getting a reissue from Toronto Police, the TTC, that the Yonge University subway line is still closed from Bloor to St. George. No street core or bus service in the downtown core, and that update just now from the TTC. So still no TTC service, and we still have GO service being held as well into the city at the request of Toronto Police. If you're on the Lakeshore East line, it's going to turn around back at Danforth at Mimico and not Exhibition. And if you are coming in from the west on the Lakeshore West line, you have to go and get off at Exhibition. So they changed that. I just read that. That's right. So Mimico and Danforth, that's where you're going to be turned off from the east and west lines of the GO train on the Lakeshore lines. And so basically, the city is in a form of lockdown for anyone coming into Union Station on the GO trains. And we're looking at live pictures right now, Anne, of the strong police force still very present in downtown Toronto. And we are keeping a close eye on where this protest is heading now, and word is it is at police headquarters. That crowd is at police headquarters now, and Toronto Police now headquarters in lockdown. Over to you.
All right, let's go live to Farah Nasser, talking to people and talking about the violent protest that began as a peaceful one. Farah.
Yes, and that's right. I'm talking to people here who are looking at this, watching everything that's happening, and also covering it. Max is an independent journalist. He's also classifies himself as a conscientious observer. Sorry, you can hear there's people in the background as well, but these are the sights and sounds of this demonstration. Max, tell me, you think it could be worse?
It could very easily be worse. We're lucky we live in Canada. in Palestine, they don't use rubber bullets in the Middle East or in other countries where the freedoms we were able to enjoy here exist.
Okay.
So,
Thanks for that, Max. I appreciate your perspective. Thank you. Now back to you guys.
All right, that is Farah Nasser talking to people who are still a part of the demonstration and those covering it as well. Some saying that they have seen worse, and for many here in Toronto, they've never seen anything quite like this. Let's go live to someone who has seen many protests in his time. Craig Kielberger, where are you and what are you seeing right now?
I'm at the corner of College and Bay. The sound you can probably hear in the background is the window smashing, the Pharma Plus, the TD Canada Trust, the CIBC building at the corner. They just marched past police headquarters. The police formed a line in full riot gear, protecting the police headquarters, protecting the entrance to the police headquarters, but no other areas are they visible at this point. The lead point is now at College and Bay. Cars are very quickly backing up. They were obviously caught off guard. It's civilians, pedestrians trying to just turn around. The blue cars being... there was a security guard who's just been attacked, who was outside the building. They have not attacked the cars, however, but they are smashing the CIBC bank. They're now inside the CIBC. No, they didn't go inside. They just smashed it. IDA drugstore, etc. There are no police in sight other than the police who were in front of the police headquarters that formed the line and didn't attempt to stop. Individuals have black masks, rocks. They're physically pulling out the rocks from the sidewalk and using them, and then large batons or large wooden items that they're using.
And Craig, what are police doing right now to try and contain this?
There is no police visible. The only police who we very briefly saw were defending in front of police headquarters, formed a line. There were maybe 30, 35 in full riot gear, side by side, shield to shield, at the entrance of the police headquarters near the corner of College and Bay. They're not engaging the protesters, so they're letting them pass. The protesters are allowing cars, civilians, to back out. They're pushing them, but not harming the civilian cars, the innocent pedestrians in the area. Although the store windows and whatnot are fair game. You have a size maybe 400 here, maybe somewhere between 400 and 500 individuals. It's tough to say between the surprise onlookers and the individuals. It's a small group that are actually covering their faces, though, maybe 100 that are doing the majority of the damage and smashing the windows.
And I want us to understand where we are. We're looking at Yonge Street, the north-south, if you went sort of left to right of your screen, and a very identifiable sign, Fran's Restaurant, at the top left corner. So this is at College and Yonge. We're looking west, and just back behind that, past Fran's, Craig, is police headquarters, and they're in lockdown right now.
Indeed. So the police have now moved. Previously, they were backed up maybe 3-4 minutes ago just at the entrance. There were fewer of them. There's now more police officers. They formed a line up to the side of the sidewalk defending police headquarters. They're now right in front of the glass exterior to the police headquarters. But this is the only building at this point where there is a police presence at. The Franz, as you mentioned, is also within my eyesight. The protesters have moved beyond the Franz. They've pushed further west. They've crossed the corner of Bay and College. They're now pushing further west onto College towards the University of Toronto. They've smashed the bus stop there. They continue to hold their black signs, continue to chant, down with G8, down with G22, and then other chants that are obscenities.
And Craig, you've been watching...
You can hear this in the background. They're actually smashing the CIBC.
Now, so they're smashing the CIBC. And do you see that the protest group continues to grow, or because you've been watching this as it began, does it appear to be the original large group?
It appears to largely be the original, although we have been monitoring social media, as I heard that you have also, and a number of organizations that are known for very militant factions have been sending out tweets and updates asking for other individuals to join. Also on social media, of course, we're also hearing updates coming from the official protest, the one that is still at Queen's Park struggling to get their message out, which is the issue-based one. And I have to say, as an NGO, as a person who's typically in the humanitarian field, it is a tragedy to see how the people here are behaving. An interesting little fact right in front of me. The second cup, which had a sign out front saying independently owned, uniquely Canadian, they had taped, that was the only building untouched on this stretch. someone just threw a rock at and smashed also.
Craig Kielberger live at Yonge and College. Thank you for that information. And Stephanie, Craig saying that that area, the protesters have been smashing windows, and that just that second cup that had a sign out saying independently owned and completely Canadian was one of very few left untouched. The protesters are on the move. Steph, what have you got?
That's right, Ann. And what I can confirm now, we were talking about the security fence. There's been no breach of the security fence, and we can confirm that from the officers at the ISU. That's some great news for them. And we can tell you now, we're going to go live to CTV's Paul Bliss. Paul, where are you right now?
I just stepped out of the hot zone. I'm around Bay and Front Street now, just compiling some of my video for a 6 o'clock newscast.
And Paul, do things seem under control there near Bay and Front? Now was quite a scene.
Oh, it is now. My cameraman and I, when we ducked out to start filing for the 6 o'clock report, we actually heard birds and said, wow, this is strangely calm. But there was about an hour of rampage. And as you've heard from Craig and everyone else, police had absolutely no control over the situation. We ourselves were dodging rocks and sticks and trying to stay ahead of it, and watching our own corporate vehicles be destroyed along with banks. We saw a young woman who was in the Starbucks at Queen and Bay when it was being destroyed. She was brought out by security in tears and tears. Incredible sights.
And so now, you know, they're on the move, Paul. They're up around College and Yonge and in front of police headquarters. Did it seem to you like they were just kind of frantic, frenetic, just going anywhere, doing what they could to disrupt, but with no clear path to go on, just kind of roaming around and setting fires?
Yeah, you know, I mean, anarchist is a good word to describe them. You know, not much leadership and just going where they want, doing what they want, seeking out corporate entities to destroy and attack symbols of power, symbols of authority, symbols of society and capitalism. But yeah, you never knew where they're going to go and what they were going to attack next. So, you know, we were just rolling and shooting on everything. And that's the difficult part, is the unpredictability.
Exactly. Now, we're hearing, Paul, a lot of buildings around the GTA, or Toronto, downtown core, sorry, and moving up farther north, in lockdown right now, including the Sheridan Centre, the Eaton Centre. I've heard Toronto General Hospital, Sick Kids Hospital. You can sense that things are in lockdown now in your area still?
Absolutely. As we walk through the financial district, you know, all the buildings have security guards on the inside, but most of them have sustained damage. There was this incredible scene where somebody had a pickaxe. So on one side is a flat hammer, on the other side is a pointed steel wedge, and he whipped it through the air like a tomahawk, and it actually pierced a window of one of the bank towers and got stuck there. And everybody started cheering. They loved the symbolism of this thing piercing through the heart of the window. And it was about 6.5 feet up, and another guy went up and jumped and grabbed it and pulled it out, and everybody cheered, and he proceeded to use it to keep crashing and bashing the window, and everybody was celebrating that.
Unbelievable. Paul, we're looking at pictures from earlier when the police car was set on fire, and then a second car on fire. You were there watching it. You couldn't believe it when we saw the smoke come. But we've not heard any reports of any serious injuries as a result of this, either with protesters or police. Three injuries we heard earlier from EMS, from protesters pushing at the riot squad and throwing things at them near Queen and John, but no other reports of any injuries on our side. Are you hearing the same?
Yeah, you know what? I did not see any injuries. In fact, as we watched the cars burn, we were sort of crouching behind these giant concrete planters because there were small explosions going off in the police cruiser, and we were rolling tape, wondering if the fuel tank was going to explode. And there were these first aid officials walking around shouting, "Anybody hurt? Anybody need care?" And they were carrying first aid kits and marked in red and white. And we didn't see any sign that anybody had been hurt. Although I did see a cameraman from another media that was sprayed with some kind of foam like you would do at a party as a party joke. That's it. Police.
CTV's Paul Bliss in the thick of it in the financial district this afternoon. Thanks very much, Paul, for that account, and an incredible scene down there earlier. And now, Ann, it's moved to the north around Yonge and College, where we're keeping a close eye on things. And Ann, Starbucks seems to be a real building of choice for some of these people.
It seems to be. And Stephanie, I was very interested with what Paul Bliss had to say, you know, literally on the ground, and his words, where were police through this? And I think that has a lot of people wondering where they are en masse going to be able to really contain this situation as these protesters who've broken away from a peaceful protest are going through the city. There's a live shot of Starbucks. You can see the damage to the windows. Let's go live to our Nathan Downer. Location, please, Nathan, and information next.
Thanks, Dan. We're just on Richmond, on the corner of Richmond and Peter Street, and just a few moments ago, there were some protesters at the corner of Queen and Peter Street, and there was a large police presence, and they're just remobilizing as we speak. I was speaking to one of the officers a little earlier. He was quite calm, and he says, look, earlier today, some of the protesters were handing out Molotov cocktails, and they could still be present on Queen Street near Peter. So that's why there's this large police presence here as well. And while we've been watching police, they've been putting on their gas masks, taking off their gas masks, sort of going back and forth. They appear to be prepared for just about anything. We're at a safe distance. There's got to be at least 300 police officers in riot gear where I'm standing. And we're also not that far from the Metro Convention Center either, where the G20 summit is taking place. We're sort of in between here, between Queen and Front on Peter Street. So that's the situation where we are. Things under control here, but of course, just based on the size of the police presence here, anything can happen, and that's what they seem to be prepared for. And
prepared they are, that is for sure. All right, thank you, CP24's Nathan Downer, for that. And Stephanie Smythe has new information for us. Stephanie.
And we just have confirmation from Mount Sinai Hospital. Basically, Anne, we can say Hospital Row is in lockdown right now. Mount Sinai confirms they're in lockdown as a precaution because of the protesters that were heading west on College toward University. Toronto General in lockdown. Sick kids also locked down. But make no mistake, emergency cases can still get in. But this is affecting Hospital Row right now. They're in lockdown, but again, emergency cases can still get into those hospitals on University Avenue. And we are working on trying to get someone with the University Health Network and all the hospitals and to come on with us and tell us more about this situation.
All right, and we've got George Lagajanis next. George, what's your location right now and what are you seeing? And what can we see through your camera?
Thanks very much, Anne. We are just going north on Yonge Street, just past Shooter, just past that location of another Starbucks that you saw with the window smashed through. I'm looking at an Urban Outfitters to my right, also smashed. Oh, right, boy, oh boy, a real mess, in fact. Let me see if I can pan over and get a shot of this Urban Outfitters. You know, Paul Bliss talking about the business district. Certainly not this stretch of Yonge Street immune either. Let me zoom in and show you. Complete devastation to the storefront on this particular shop. This is Urban Outfitters. Let me just tilt down a little bit and show you what's on the ground. People are stopping now and taking pictures. Unaware if these are people that were involved in the protest. Likely not. These are probably just people who are now walking on Yonge Street because the street, as you can see, is shut down to vehicular traffic. All we can see are people walking on foot, bicycles, some horse dung, because obviously the Mounted Police unit was up and down this street. Now we're coming up to what looks like bigger crowds towards Yonge and Dundas Square. Shop after shop, a Champs shop completely smashed through the windows. Also, parts of a Sears store, smashed windows, one after another. You know, this promise of peace and quiet with this protest has not come true whatsoever. Just let me focus my camera up, and one moment while I get the focus working again. All right, we're approaching Yonge and Dundas Square. Let me tilt up, pardon the bad work, and we'll show you that the crowds have picked up. There we go, and let me focus up for you. There you can see the sea of humanity north of us. There's the shot. Again, pardon the bad camera work. We're at Yonge and Dundas, so north of us, up to presumably College, where you just saw the bus go across, and possibly going back up to Queen's Park, where they're going to reconvene these groups. That's where the majority of the people on the streets are now. Some protesters coming back south towards us, others going north. You know, they said from the beginning, these anarchist groups, I'm just going to ask my cameraman to drive straight for a moment, you know, disruption is their goal, and that's the way they're going to get attention. When it costs something, they feel that's when they'll get noticed. They say they didn't advocate violence from the beginning, but they made no promises. And,
so people are just
walking. Didn't come true today.
People are just walking freely down the street where normally there would be vehicular traffic.
Absolutely, that's right, Amber. We're at the corner of Yonge and Dundas, the peak value intersection
beyond
in
the
Toronto
scramble
for pedestrian
intersection.
traffic. This is the scramble. Let me tilt down and pull out and show you. That's the scramble. So people are scrambling. No cars though, at all. Just people on foot or on bike, and one car beside us. So this hasn't been officially locked down to traffic because there is a vehicle beside us, but you're kind of driving through this area at your own risk. All safe and sound, though. I can tell you, Yonge Dundas Square, complete ghost town, completely empty. A few tents set up, but everyone has avoided the square, and they're going north on Yonge, and let's follow them. And
you are heading very carefully as
and we are slowly chasing the crowd in.
Yes, exactly. And again, as we see with our cameras, a lot of people. Do you see a great police presence as well?
No. You know what? And funny you should mention that. On Yonge Street, very, very few police. In fact, our vehicle seems to be more of an attention grabber than the store windows, which I'm guessing now people have gotten used to seeing one after another. A Rogers store right beside me, also. Windows smashed through. Part of a boathouse store.
And people walking the streets.
Walking freely now.
No vehicular traffic whatsoever.
No, this is the aftermath, and we're going to have to obviously dodge some pylons now just to get past. Might be difficult for us to get past now. Let me just pull out, and we'll wrap up this live report. There you go.
And we've got
those
a live
pylons
shot
that were thrown in the road now. We're preventing us from driving further. We have to get out and try and move them to get closer to the crowds. And we'll send it back to you as we follow this group.
Okay, George, thank you. And I want to go back to that Queen Street shot that we just had. And again, it's no cars, just people walking. Don't know where they're going, their purpose at this point, but just walking the streets. No cars, no transit. People walking the streets, some looking like they're quite aimlessly walking. Let's go live to Craig Kielberger. It's almost as if some are just a bit stunned by what has happened in the past couple of hours. Craig, where's your location and what can you tell us right now? We're hoping to get Craig Kielberger. All right, we've got some viewer pictures. You know, that's what always makes this kind of communication so important. Here's let's take a look right now. Thank you, sending them to My Breaking News. And here is a picture. I'd love to be able to say who sent these pictures, and we'll try to do that. But there you have pictures of what began as a peaceful protest turning absolutely ugly, with storefronts broken, smashed, and using any material available, pulling out furniture from furniture stores. Thank you for safely taking these pictures. We'd never want you to be in harm's way, but you can see that people taking over the street. And there's Steve's Music Store, a well-known store on Queen Street West, and you can see bottom left just the sheer number of people. There we have protesters on top of a police car. So at this point, we're going to go back to Stephanie Smythe with more details. And Steph, just want to reiterate that there is at this point no subway service south of Bloor, the Yonge Line, the University Line. Go Transit is not coming into downtown Toronto. Some hospitals are in lockdown. The Eaton Centre at last word was in lockdown. Police headquarters in lockdown. Sure doesn't sound like Toronto.
Yeah, that's for sure, Anne. And here we have a little bit more information from the Eaton Centre. They can confirm that they're in hard lockdown, they're calling it. All the entrances are locked there. However, customers can leave. This all began, they say, at about 3:30 this afternoon. Their preliminary reports at the Eaton Centre indicate 2 broken windows at Sears and the Starbucks on Yonge Street. They're going to stay in lockdown, and until police indicate violent protest has subsided in the area. We now have Julia Howard on live from the University Health Network to talk about the lockdowns on Hospital Row. Good afternoon, Julia. Tell us about how you've secured the hospitals on University Avenue.
We have security at the doors. Our doors are locked. All of our staff can access the facility using their badges, and obviously patients and family members will have to identify themselves to come into the building. We've done it because we're being cautious. You know, we're watching the news like everybody else, and we just want to make sure that our building is as secure as it can be.
Okay, and which hospitals? We've got it at Mount Sinai, Toronto General, Sick Children's Hospital, all included in this lockdown?
Yeah, so the University Health Network hospitals on University Avenue are Princess Margaret and the Toronto General. It's our understanding that Mount Sinai and Sick Kids as well are locked down.
Okay, Jillian Howard with the University Health Network, thank you for that update. And we'll let everyone know, and when those hospitals come out of lockdown. We have confirmed right now, Anne, and I believe this is the first time, but tear gas is being used at college and university. From confirmed by Tim Burrows with the ISU, tear gas being used at College and University right now. And that's just south of the Queen's Park designated demonstration site.
Yes.
I can't imagine why they deploy it there and not down on Queen Street when they were smashing windows.
Let's get the definitive information. We go live now to Craig Kielberger on scene. Craig, why has tear gas been used at this point?
Well, you know, to be honest, I actually thought that was a flare the first time I saw it going off. It certainly moved people back. I'm at the exact corner of University and College. The police are in full riot gear, lining up across College, maybe about 50 feet down on the University side. 3 deep, full riot gear, shield to shield, batons in their hands. We see them holding their line. There was at one point, it looked like the protesters were approaching them en masse. That's when that item was deployed. That again, I thought it was a flare the first time. It was only one shot that was used that I saw when the smoke rose from it. The police have also brought a Greyhound bus that came in on the west end of the intersection, and they have also blocked off that exit. You can't go further west onto College. There are, within eyesight, I would say about 250, maybe 300 police now who are here. Now, this is a stark contrast from what we saw literally moments ago, where the group was roving through the streets with not a police officer in sight. The only police we briefly saw was on College in front of the police headquarters. But now the police presence is very strong. They have a series of vans blocking the intersection on 2 sides. The other 2 sides, one was where we originated from, is still very open, going east on College, and the other is Queen's Park, which ironically was the start of this demonstration. And of course, at that point, it was with great hope that it would be a peaceful one.
You know, Craig, so many places that we're looking at live, people have just taken over the streets and they're going every which direction. How are police able to control that aspect of it? There's nothing violent that we're seeing here, but people have literally taken over the streets of some areas of downtown Toronto.
They have, and tragically, I have actually seen violence. I've seen one security guard who was attempting to stop a person from smashing the windows, and they went after that individual, severely kicking and striking that security guard. Right in front of me, there's a Ontario license plate rental vehicle that they say was used by undercover officers. People are now posing for photos in front of it. It was completely smashed. The buildings we've seen range from CIBC to TD Banks to, again, even small mom-and-pop stores. You know, often we have an image of these protesters targeting only mainstream Nike, etc. But no, they went after mom-and-pop stores, American Apparel, which is a store that prides itself on being sweatshop-free. This group still has a number of signs saying no fences, no borders, signs for various social issues, signs with various anarchist messages, and then some signs that are just generally on progressive causes. It's become especially confusing right now, I imagine, for a police officer, because they arrived at Queen's Park, where you still had some remnants of that peaceful demonstration. Right. People have now walked over to see what's going on, and now you have an intermix between the protesters who have committed those acts of violence and then individuals who are just here for a peaceful protest. We now see maybe 30 police on horse, mounted units, in a full line blocking the entire street. They're moving along College East. They paused maybe 20 or 30 meters. And then a second line of officers on foot behind them, 2 or 3 deep at this point approaching. So we're now closed on 3 sides, with the only available exit route being towards Queen's Park.
Now, are police intent on finding, are we understanding that the violent protesters are now interspersed among the peaceful protesters? Is that what you're saying?
They are very much interspersed. And I heard the interview with Miller saying that they would do everything within their power to find those individuals. Be very difficult at this exact moment to isolate them, because you have ordinary citizens who have come out in the streets to take a look. You had individuals who were involved in that Queen's Park rally that had wandered over for the end of that Queen's Park rally to see what was going on. It's a very busy intersection normally, and now you have a mix of individuals who are clad in black or wearing masks on their face, very easily visible, but others were not as identifiable, who are also committing acts of vandalism, and they're now interspersed among the general public. You might be able to hear in the background.
I can hear the mounted units.
The horses. as they approach the intersection.
And we're looking at, so we had a moment ago just a live shot of Queen's Park, and it appeared to me that there were some people standing on top of a subway entrance as well. I don't know if you can confirm that, but
yes, actually, I can. They're still there as we speak. They're taking photos, again, a mix of ordinary citizens and individuals who were involved in the protest. You might just also hear behind me.
There, Craig, we actually have a live
the shield
shot.
Striking the side of the thigh of the officers in full riot gear with gas masks, as approximately 4, 5 lines deep march towards the protesters. You can hear them right here. I don't know if you heard them shouting, "Get back, get back."
So the sound again, Craig, is what?
The sound, the batons striking the padding, the protective shielding that they have in the side of their thighs.
So it's like a warning tap, if you will, against
a warning
themselves.
as they approach the intersection. Now you have police have now created a box on 3 sides, and the protesters are now running back. They are running towards the front lawn of Queen's Park, surrounding the Queen's Park subway. As they create a full line. There's actually another 4 lines of police officers now coming up College. There must be hundreds. I can't even estimate how many police there are now on all 3 sides closing this in. There's a second wave 4 deep approaching.
So they are on the move to contain and control this situation, and obviously they had intelligence that told them that the protesters who were committing the violent acts were converging on Queen's Park, and now they've been able to at least make a great attempt to try and corral them. Is that maybe a proper word, Craig?
In fact, that'd be I think it was a cat and mouse game at first, where there was the protesters did maintain as a group, largely maintained as a group. A brief moment when we were with them at Bay and Wellington, when they were separated, they clumped together again. They went to the Eaton Center, then they proceeded their way up towards University and College. They marched towards Queen's Park, University and College, where they now are. And again, it's interesting to note that this is the first substantial police presence that we've seen. We saw a substantial police presence at Bay and Wellington when they first took control of the situation with the 2 police cars on fire. But this is the first that we've seen now in almost an hour of a strong police presence on the streets. And the protesters have not moved their ground, though. They continue to still be there.
And we have confirmation that tear gas has been used. You are now telling us, and we heard the sound of the riot gear officers with their batons slapping against their equipment, their padding as they march forward. Let's go live right now to our Stephanie Smythe. It seems that this is escalating, Stephanie, and police are, if you will, circling the situation. What have you got?
And right now I'm hearing from CTV's Michelle Dubé. Police inside the security fence at Bay and Wellington just yelled, "Hold the line." They can see protesters on Bay possibly heading south again. Joining me live on the phone right now is Constable Wendy Drummond. Wendy, what can you tell us about that line, the security fence at Bay and Wellington, and how close protesters are to breaking that line and that fence, that barrier?
Well, yeah, our officers are going to maintain that line, and then that's our plan. We're here for the long haul, and we're going to continue to ensure that that area is safe.
Okay, so you don't have any word that that fence has been broken yet at all?
No, I've got no information. There's been rumors all day saying that that security fence has been breached, which is all false.
Wendy, what about the possibility of reinforcements going to that security zone or coming from Deerhurst down to the Toronto area, police reinforcements?
Again, we don't talk about our strategic plans. We have numerous resources available, and we're able to deploy them at any time. So, like I said, we're here for the long haul. We're going to maintain the integrity and security of that fence and the security of our personnel.
Wendy Drummond, we had confirmed from another member of the ISU, tear gas has been used at College and University. This, we believe, can you confirm this is the first time tear gas has been used in Toronto?
Yes, I do have information that it was deployed in the university and college area. Our officers do have the protection equipment to deal with that type of thing, and yes, it has been deployed.
So this would, to our understanding, be the first time tear gas has ever been deployed in Toronto during protest?
That's my understanding.
Okay, Wendy Drummond, that indicates that this has gone to another level, and we have to keep an eye on the security perimeter, of course, and the sound cannon, as it's called, is another possibility. I understand. Is it deployed and ready in the event that the fence is breached?
Again, yes, it is definitely something that we have at our availability, and it will be deployed as necessary. Every approach that we take is going to be one that's planned and is going to be appropriate.
Okay, and one more question. Just confirm the number of arrests today so far and in total.
At last count, there were 8. Having said that, that was a couple of hours ago. It is just my expectation that that number has increased.
Okay, Wendy Drummond, thanks very much with the ISU for that information. We'll check with you periodically. Over to you, Ann.
Right, Stephanie Smythe, and again, just reconfirming what Wendy Drummond had to say, Toronto Police. 8 arrests so far, and tear gas has been used for the first time ever in Toronto. Craig Kielburger is in the center of it all, and Craig, describe everything to us, please.
I don't know if you're able to see the feed that's coming from the truck right now at the moment. Thank you. I don't know if you're able to see this at the moment, but we have approximately 500 police officers behind us. They've arrived at a phase.
Craig, go back on the phone if you don't mind. Craig.
The protesters. It was approximately 20-25 minutes ago that we saw an officer fire, again, what I thought was a flare, just because I was so stunned that they would use tear gas, what turned out to be tear gas onto the street, and to move the protesters back so they wouldn't advance further south down University. There are approximately 600-700 protesters who remain near Queen's Park. They've converged here and are now holding their ground, as are the officers in full riot gear with their tear gas masks on. And as you can see, they're advancing as we speak, giving signals to further tighten the 3 sides where these protesters are now only on one side near Queen's Park. They're now moving in to create a 4th perimeter to truly lock down all 4 sides.
Now, we're watching this going on, so please continue to describe what it is that you are seeing right now. They're on the move again, Craig.
They are. So to give you an idea, the protesters marched down the street that you're seeing the shot on right now, smashing windows and buildings. They were smashing TD Bank, CIBC Bank. They confronted a series of cars and drivers. They didn't smash those cars, but they did smash cars with police officers. Directly in front of me, I'm not sure if you can see it in your shot, but there was a dark gray van. It had what the group identified, and I'm not sure how they did this, but identified as under police officers. Rightly or wrongly identified them as such. The individuals went running from that car, and then they smashed the windows of the car and proceeded to take photos next to those windows. It was at this very corner, as you're witnessing, where the tear gas was shot on the ground when the individuals had rushed forward about 20 minutes ago. Tragically, it's the same region where, again, the protest march just started earlier today with such great hope when we saw about 2,000 individuals from labor unions, religious organizations, nonprofits, peacefully marching at this very corner. This is where the march earlier today, 1 p.m., started its journey, and of course took such a tragic twist when it reached the point of Queen and Spadina, when the march rounded that side, and a group, the group you see in front of you, then proceeded to double back and to charge in front of Queen. We now see individuals who, the journalists actually, who are right in front taking photos, but the so-called anarchists, the groups who have been doing the vandalism, who are now still holding their ground in front of Queen's Park, they're chanting, "Our streets, whose streets are streets, whose streets are streets," and they're shouting police brutality, and now the police are continuing to form a line. Again, riot shears in hand, gas masks on. You can see people raising their fists and pumping them in the air. The police, interestingly, are engaged in some type of act at the moment where they have, they're taking off their masks. I'm actually not sure what they're doing at the moment, but they are creating, obviously, what is a type of defensive position to choose some type of next action.
Thank you very much, Craig Kielburger. We're going to continue to keep an eye on this particular scene. Obviously, this is now really the center of where the police presence is. As you mentioned, 500 police in full riot gear, 600 to 700 protesters still in the area. Scott Laurie joins us live now. Scott, what can you tell us?
And I'm just beside Queen's Park where the initial rally started. And what we have is a situation where tear gas has been set off at least 2 or 3 times at the corner of College and University, which is where the marches originally started. Now what we have is this large group, which appeared about 20 minutes ago. They came from College Street, moving west along College from in front of the police station. They have been standing there for some time now. The police brought in the mounted unit. They are now essentially just in a standoff, what appears to be a standoff with the protesters, not allowing them to go south on University once again. Nobody here seems to be feeling the effects of the tear gas canisters that did explode. But again, I heard at least 2, maybe 3 pops and gas in the air. Police did confirm that they used it at this corner.
Lori, how would you describe the climate there right now? You know, we've seen just about everything from peaceful protests to increased violence and tension. How would you describe that climate right now where you are?
It seems to be, you know, going in waves where we have some people who are just leaving, you know, people who were at this protest initially hours ago at 1, 2 o'clock when it started. They seem to be leaving. But again, there are these roving packs of people who at one point passed by here, but along College, and have been scattered throughout the city, causing trouble, giving police reason to use tear gas. We saw those police cars burning. But again, you have this mixture of people who came out for legitimate protest, and they did so. But you know, they're sprinkled with people who are causing a lot of damage to the city.
Scott, Lori, thank you for that. We'll speak with you again in just a moment. It is 5:02 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Let's go back live to Stephanie Smythe. And just a couple of hours ago, Steph, we had a conversation with Mayor David Miller. He expressed his anger about the situation and the group that has splintered off from a peaceful protest and caused all of this damage. We may be hearing from him again.
That's right. We've just heard from his office that the mayor is going to have a media availability today at 5:30. This is going to be held at the Direct Energy Center down inside the Media Briefing Theater number 2. The media hoping to attend, he says, must have accreditation, of course, blah, 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 to get in there for this media briefing with the mayor. In the meantime, we will, of course, be covering that live, Ann. Right now, let's go back to our special correspondent, Craig Kielburger, who is in the thick of it all at College and University. We know, Craig, that they fired tear gas. It's confirmed and confirmed on CP24. It's the first time in Toronto tear gas has been used. We also are hearing that there's a decontamination unit on scene at the northeast corner of Adelaide and Spadina. That's going to be the next step for people who got in the midst of this tear gas. Over to you, Craig.
Indeed, we are, as you mentioned, literally at the corner of University and College, where the police have formed a line side to side with their shields. The protesters are within feet of them. It is quite literally a face-off at this moment. It is a matter of feet of the distance between away. A few moments ago, the protesters started to throw stones and other items towards the police. The police, at that point, reacted by kneeling down and adding further extra precautions to the items that they're wearing. They're now holding the streets on both sides because you have ordinary citizens and passersby trying to hold back. But it is literally a stare-off at this moment. You have the protesters within a few feet, the police within a few feet, and they're chanting at each other, chanting whose streets, our street, and continue to throw items at the police. At the moment, the police are not reacting to these taunts. They're simply holding ground on all 3 sides.
Stephanie Smythe is on the phone right now getting more information. I will step in, Craig Kielburger. It seems as if it is a, if you will, and I'm always hesitant to use the word standoff. You would describe this as a cat and mouse game. Now, they are facing one another. Tell me, from your experience, what could happen next?
Well, we've reached a point where it is very tense and very difficult to further use tear gas simply because the number of ordinary citizens you have. It's also important to point out, and this is a factor, it started to pour rain here. You're going to soon have the ordinary citizens on the streets starting to disperse. That may increase or decrease the likelihood of them using tear gas. You know, I remember when I was in Quebec City in 2001, witnessing very similar scenes to this, the police in full riot gear. The difference being that in those situations, often they were able to limit the very narrow streets to limit the protester movements, and then to move in for to arrest and detain the organizers. It was a snatch and grab where they would often run and grab the person who was throwing an item and then bring them behind police lines to cease those type of provocative actions. That is not possible here. This police line could not go and grab ordinary individuals. There's simply too many of them, and the police are too exposed on all four sides. There's no buildings to contain it. So you have police spread out. Even though they initially arrived 3 or 4 deep, there's only one line and then one backup line. There are many officers. There's still hundreds of officers here, but it's such a wide geographic region where it's such openness that they're struggling to hold everyone back simply because it's such a large open space where College meets Queen's Park. So you still have hundreds of people who are witnessing this, ordinary citizens, and of course, again, the group that committed those acts of vandalism that are literally feet to feet, who are taunting, throwing, pushing, chanting now at the police, and the police are not reacting to these chants at the moment.
CP24 special correspondent Craig Kielberger live in the heat of this situation and the heart of it as well at College and University. I want to go over to Stephanie Smythe live right now. And Stephanie, there obviously police feel that they have contained this situation, or at least they're in a position to be able to deal with the situation. There is concern, though, on the part of some that there might still be protesters outside of this area who still might feel free to be violent.
That's right, Anne. We are hearing from Michelle Dubé, who is CTV's Michelle Dubé, down around Bay and Wellington. She says officers there are lined up inside the security fence at Bay and Wellington, putting on gas masks. Police yelling, "Get right out of the area. You can see we are putting on our masks." Protesters, she says, there are loud and 1 block north, and they are being held by a line of police. Now, also, inside the security fence, inside that line is our own Gurdeep Ahluwalia. Gurdeep, what can you see from your vantage point?
Hi there, Steph. Yeah, I can confirm exactly what Michelle Dubé has just told us. We are just inside the fence, in between, in about a 300-foot stretch of road on Simcoe between Wellington and Front Street, and it is closed off within here. I took a peek up by the fence, and I saw hundreds of police officers lined up within that security fence. Now, I got within about 20 feet before they told me to get back, to clear the area. I pushed back about 30 feet. They pushed us back even further to about 50 feet. At that point, we saw the police officers take off the helmets they were wearing and put on gas masks, and then put their riot gear on over their gas masks. We're hearing some scuttle from the crowd here that the protesters may be rushing the fence, so it looks like they are getting the tear gas ready and the proper apparatus ready here for all the police officers. And again, hundreds of them lining the inside of the fence here. I'm standing at the corner of Wellington and Simcoe right now, and it extends west and east from where I'm standing, Stephanie.
Okay, thanks, Gurdeep Ahluwalia. Inside the line, as we say, down at Wellington and Bay, keeping a close eye. Look at this. Check this out. These riot police and police on bicycles with their helmets on. I'm not sure what street we're looking at right now.
It is Queen's Park. I believe it's Queen's Park, University Avenue at this point. Steph, I believe south of College. Now, it looks like the circle. So
Queen's Park
really
Circle,
need to,
yeah, they're arcing around there. Yeah. They're moving slowly, and I'm not sure what direction they're going in, Anne, but they are in full force there, no question.
It appears to be south just because of it looks as if they're on the descent as opposed to the ascent, and it does go down as you go toward the lake. Now, they've stopped, Stephanie.
Okay, and we know that the mounted unit is there as well, Anne, so a huge police presence at Queen's Park. But again, we were saying this is curious. This is the designated area for protesters, and maybe they just want to protect the provincial buildings there. But, you know, down on Queen Street, down on Bay Street, not quite the same presence, Anne, when police cars were on fire. There you see protesters making a dash for it somewhere. And we're getting a lot of tweets about that, Anne. People requesting that we don't call the so-called black bloc protesters. They don't want them to be lumped in with the peaceful protest group that began marching at Queen's Park earlier today. You know, 4,000 strong coming down University Avenue earlier today, and not a lot of trouble until this very small group did a lot of damage.
Stephanie Smythe, hang tight. I've got Adam Vaughan on the line, city councillor, and this has all been taking place in his ward. Adam, can you comment on the damage that you've seen so far, and what do you say to the constituents in your ward?
Well, it's a situation that's unfolding and clearly inappropriate and unacceptable damage being done. I just hope we've seen the worst of it, and that there's no more personal injury. It's why we wanted a compensation package in place ahead of time. These are small businesses. Many of them have people living on top of the stores. When you start seeing fires shoot up along Queen Street, or police cars lit afire, or buildings being damaged, those of us who live and work in the downtown know that means that people whose apartments are in very close proximity to some pretty volatile situations. And I realize folks on the street aren't probably listening to the broadcast, but clearly everybody needs to take it back more than a notch now. They need to just completely get it under control, and I hope that happens sooner rather than later.
You've had a passion for Toronto all of your life, and you've been a broadcaster, and now you're a politician. Can you make any sense of this?
Well, I don't think you can. I mean, the democratic rights of people to protest, I think, was respected. I was down on Queen Street earlier today. I think it was an orderly march and respectful. I think the police, accommodated, and it was fine. I think it was appropriate. Quite clearly, there's some people who are looking to cause trouble. When you see pictures of people carrying pickaxes to demonstrations, quite clearly, it's not a demonstration. It's something else. And as I said, there are people who live above these stores, live above these small banks and other little stores along Queen Street, right throughout the downtown. And I just hope that calm is restored as quickly as possible.
Councillor Adam Vaughan, thank you very much for those words. Okay. Let's go live to our breaking news producer, Stephanie Smythe, with the very latest. And Steph, this is a fluid situation.
Well, that's right, Anna. We have our crews all over the city right now, and we're learning right now that there is some mass looting going on Yonge Street. We've reported already that the Eaton Centre is in lockdown, but we're also hearing that objects are being thrown at police outside Toronto Police Headquarters on Carlton, and looting going on, and police trying to restrain looters and then letting them go. And now I'm going to go live to CTV's Natalie Johnson. Natalie, what is your location and what can you tell us?
Hi there. We're in the CTV satellite truck that's actually right by the corner of University at College. And just a few minutes ago, we saw hundreds, literally, of officers on bike and on foot, some in riot gear with gas masks and shields, come south down in front of the Queen's Park Legislature building. And they now appear to be at a standoff. There are not a whole lot of protesters here right now, and the ones that we do see do appear to be the peaceful protesters, not the anarchists who were causing so much damage earlier on. So they're at a standoff. They appear to be trying to keep the crowd from going south, again, down College and University.
Okay, so you're not seeing any show of huge force there, though, by protesters or police. Like, we're looking at live pictures right now at Queen's Park of police in riot gear and police with their bicycles, helmets on, ready to take control of the streets again. So everything seems relatively in control for you.
Everything is a lot more peaceful here than certainly the pictures we saw downtown earlier. This crowd seems to be completely under control. There's a huge police presence. I don't know if that's had any sort of deterring effect on this crowd, but then again, these are the protesters who are here to protest the more peaceful causes. We're seeing, a wide variety of groups supporting everything from Christian rights to anti-abortion to Greenpeace. So at this point, from where I am, it doesn't look like there's anything out of control.
Okay, and we were just getting that report from Carlton, or rather College Street, in front of headquarters, where there was some looting going on and Toronto Police having some tussles with looters there. So I think things, Anne, are kind of sporadic around the city right now. We do know that there's that issue down at Bay and Wellington around the perimeter. That is still being watched very carefully.
Wendy Drummond is now saying...
And stand by for a second.
Information received, info that gas was not deployed.
Okay, and Natalie, moments ago, we had Wendy Drummond on CP24 confirming that tear gas was deployed or fired at College and University. She's now tweeting that she's been given info that the tear gas was not deployed. So they're clearly trying to get their information in order, and Natalie, we'll try to get the real picture on that. Wendy had confirmed it. Now she's saying not so much. So we'll check back into it and look into that as well. I also, while we're keeping an eye on this, Anne, I know, and Natalie, a lot of people have questions about what is happening or not happening in the city right now in terms of events going forward tonight. We do still have the subway service suspended from Bloor down to University in both directions, both on the Yonge and the University line. Still no TTC subway service or bus service. Also, we have a GO train service. Union Station is closed right now. All train service has been temporarily suspended at the request of police, and all trains in service are going to terminate at their destinations. They say at GO they're working closely with police to ensure the safe movement of their passengers, but Union Station closed at the request of police right now. That's still in effect. We know if you want to go to the Toronto FC game tonight at 7:30, it's still a go-ahead, but give yourself extra time to get to the stadium. The ACC has a sold-out Andre Rieu concert tonight. It's still a go. Gates still open at 6. And I just updated you on the GO and TTC situation. So something's still closed in terms of transportation into the city and around the city. But that concert, we got a lot of requests about that concert, Ann, tonight at the ACC.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You know, I guess in a way life goes on. But, you know, this is so important. One thing that we are proud to do here at CP24 is get you where you're going. Very important information, Steph, that you just dispense when it comes to transit and travel. And, you know, I've been asking all of our different remote hosts on scene why there are so many people on the streets. Well, part of that might be, I mean, beyond the protests, also people just trying to get where they need to go without the ability to use public transit at this point. And as we've been hearing, there's a sense of, well, it is beginning to ramp down a little bit as far as the tension is concerned. Harken back to just a couple of hours ago, Stephanie, when we were seeing sites that we've never really seen here in the city of Toronto. Mayor David Miller spoke with us live, as did Adam Vaughan. We've heard from Adam Giambroni. We've also heard from people on the street, their thoughts about this. I believe that we might be hearing from the mayor again at 5:30. And we're watching these live pictures, and they are just, you know, I've been around the block, around the circle a few times. I have never seen anything quite like this. It is stunning, and you've got the best seat in the house here watching this on Toronto's breaking news, CP24. And it was interesting, Steph, as all of these violent events were occurring, people asking, where are police? Well, there they are, and they know what they're doing, and it is a person's democratic right to demonstrate, to protest. It just has to remain peaceful.
And Anne, we have more information from Toronto Police that indeed confirmation, no tear gas was deployed.
All right, I'm going to rip that note up that I have then. Yes, good. I mean, those are first that you do not want to have to broadcast, that's for sure. Steph, could you confirm, please, that the Eaton Centre is still locked down, the Sheraton Centre, the Delta Chelsea, and police headquarters?
Confirm that. All still in lockdown, as well as the hospitals on Hospital Row. The University Health Network confirming to us Mount Sinai, Toronto General, Sick Children's Hospital still in lockdown. Patients can't, or rather, you know, the patients stay in there. People can get out of the hospital, but nobody's going in.
Now there's the mounted unit picking up their pace a bit. Now our camera just panned to the left, but perhaps we can see that again.
There they are.
You see all forces coming together, and from various cities across the country, trying to keep everyone safe. The leaders, Torontonians, peaceful protesters, trying to just keep this city in the same fashion that it normally is, 360, what, 3 days of the year. Not these 2 days, perhaps. We hope that there will be some resolve, but right now it is a wait-and-see, Steph.
Now, Anne, we're hearing from our Farah Nasser that 3 buses full of police officers are heading eastbound on Queen Street right now, along with paramedics and other unmarked vehicles. Not sure where they're going.
Where? Do you know?
No, Farah doesn't say, but east on Queen. And we're going to try to find out more about what that is all about.
Right.
I'm curious about this presence at Queen's Park, the designated protest area.
Boarded up Queen's Park, I will add.
Sure, and this huge presence. They're obviously you know, there's something that's keeping them there, some concerns.
Well, Craig Kielburger had explained that he felt that some of the more violent protesters had mixed in with the peaceful protesters to make it more difficult for police to, you know, really kind of shut them down. Craig is live with us right now. Craig, what's the situation at this point?
It has certainly taken a more tense turn here. The police have now used a mace or pepper spray, and I'm disposing a canister in people's eyes to back them away. I'm witnessing right in front of me young male in his 20s who is against a fence. They've created a barricade and arresting him. A few moments ago, the crowd was chanting, "Let him go, let him go." The group has started to sit in front of this police barricade, putting their hands linked behind their heads as a peaceful act of refusing to move. The police, maybe about 10 minutes ago, pushed forward and started to move the group further towards Queen's Park. They've now, in a show of force that I've never seen before in my life, there must be close to 1,000 police officers here on horseback with riot shields. Within my eyesight, 1,000, and I can't even see everything here. And they've started to do some very limited arrests as they started to pull people to the ground.
Now, Craig, at one point you said that you thought that the protesters' number was about 600 or 700, but we've got onlookers as well. So, I mean, if the math is correct, then it does seem that police are outnumbering the protesters at this stage.
From my vantage point, it does appear that way, but it is a little difficult to see because Queen's Park itself is now surrounded on all sides by police officers, and I can see that the protesters are eye to eye. It's difficult to see how deep they are, although, again, it's important for people who are not aware of the geography of this region to understand how spread out this is. The police are literally one line deep. They're one line deep because it is such an open space at Queen's Park. The protesters are on University and Queen's Park on the Carleton side, the college side, all the way around Queen's Park towards the U of T area. It's a massive area where there are protesters who are spread out, sometimes only one or two deep. The police are now pushing us back. You can hear this. This is them striking their shields against the baton. That sound they're making is driving the crowds back. And again, you see a limited number of arrests take place.
CP24 special correspondent Craig Kielberger right in the middle of it. And Craig, it seems just by what you have described that police are sending a very strong message, both by their presence and by their movements, Craig.
They are indeed.
Now, what are we seeing? We just had a shot. I don't know if we can go back to it. It looked as if someone was being picked up and taken by police in handcuffs, so an arrest potentially has been made. Are you able to see that, Craig?
Indeed, they've taken an individual I can see in front of me who is arrested, a second individual in a black shirt who's being led behind police lines, his hands bound behind him. Also in front of me is a group of protesters. It was interesting, when the police advanced, a group sat down, refused to move, hands linked, and the police in essence have created a U-shape. They haven't touched these individuals who are now seated as they moved everyone else back, short of this one group that has refused to give ground.
You know, that stuff started, I think, in the 60s, even before my time. They used to call it sit-ins. But this is a very different situation, and you can cut the tension with a knife. And yet, what we're seeing now are a lot of people standing, watching, not really sure if they were a part of the peaceful side of the labor protest earlier this afternoon. But it's a very busy place, and it's a very fluid situation, and your descriptions have made us feel as if we're absolutely right there with you, Craig.
If I may give you the latest, by the way, the police are now appearing to give a little ground. They are backing away from Queen's Park, tightening their ranks, now going too deep in the corner of Queen Park, corner of University at the most northern tip. They're backing away, tightening their ranks, going too deep, and the protesters and onlookers are now in the most northern tip of Queen's Park, southern tip of Queen's Park, watching this, and they're not pushing ahead. Each group seems to, the protesters are remaining where they are, and the police seem to be backing up a little bit, moving their bicycles, moving their bicycle blockade, and moving their riot shields. It's unclear what the next step will be.
And what does that signal? Again, you've had experience with protests, and I know that every city, every country deals with protests in a similar fashion in some regards, and a very different fashion in others. What could possibly be being signaled by police by backing off a bit?
Well, I've attended and seen and witnessed almost a dozen protests, and I have to say I've never seen a protest where the police have been so thin in numbers over such a wide geographic region. So I think that they were pulling back to ensure that they were more than just one deep in case problems arose. They've decided to take a smaller geographical footprint, but to have greater control over the land, which is under their control. And the protests have calmed at the moment. There isn't chanting. It does appear that each group is awaiting an action by the other.
CP24 special correspondent Craig Kielburger will talk to you in just moments. Thank you for that. And Stephanie Smythe, you were able to confirm with Wendy Drummond that 8 people had been arrested. It appears that 2 more, and we can't confirm that. We can only get that information from our Craig Kielburger. Now police are on the move, Steph.
Yeah, it's obvious they're trying to secure this whole area to prevent protesters from heading south on University. And I can tell you that the hospital row is still in lockdown. Every hospital is still in lockdown. They were having trouble with protesters.
So just south of this area that we're seeing
just
right
south
now.
of this area, we have Mount Sinai, Princess Margaret, we have Toronto General, we have Sick Children's Hospital.
It almost appears as if they are trying to corral and contain the situation. And Craig had said that he noted that it was not the largest police presence that he's ever seen, but this is a large city, and we have G20 leaders not too far from this particular fluid situation. So, you know, the presence has to be in the places that are most needed.
Absolutely, and they're going to continue this, I guess, this kind of cat and mouse dodge until they're able to just make sure everything is secured. And we don't have any more reports down from the security fence or inside the line and that there's any trouble down there. I think they believe that possibly some of the breakaway protesters or Black Bloc that were causing some trouble are mingled in this crowd, and that's why they're so concerned. But it does appear that they're and this is the line down to Bay and Wellington area where Gurdeep Ahluwalia is, and we're keeping a close eye on this situation too. They want to secure that fence. Very symbolic there, Anne, and I'm surprised that the protesters, or at least the anarchists, did not make their way down there, though they tried, but they got a little bit tied up setting some police cars on fire.
Stephanie Smythe, it has been quite an afternoon, and it isn't over yet. This summit is 2 days in the making, and we've got Gurdeep Ahluwalia down, which exactly where we were looking, by the security fence. Gurdeep, you've got an up-close and personal look at what's going on there. Bring us to you. Let us know what you're seeing and what you're hearing.
All right, and yeah, we are, myself and my cameraman are on Simcoe right now, in between Front and Wellington. It's an area that's sort of in between the fence perimeters, about a 300-foot stretch of Simcoe. We came here several hours ago, and it was since locked down, everything within here, the restaurants, the buildings, locked down within then. And I can tell you that I've walked up to the front lines now. I got turned away earlier, about half an hour ago, but right now I'm able to actually walk up to the corner of Simcoe and Wellington, which is where I'm standing. It appears that the majority of the action is east of where I'm standing, towards University, towards Bay. I just saw an influx of police officers in their gas masks, heading east towards that area. West of me, there are police lining the fence. I would estimate, to confirm what Craig Kielburger was telling us earlier, there are hundreds of police officers lining the fence as far west as I can see, up to about John, and as far east as I can see, down to about University. But again, the majority of the action appears to be east of where I'm standing, down towards the University area. The police have not taken off their gas gear. It was about half an hour ago. They told everyone, including myself, who was standing near the fence, to back up, to clear the area. That's when they put on their riot gear and their gas masks. And since then, they've been holding a line across this fence. And we continue to wait and see what's happening. And I've been periodically trying to come up to the fence, been turned back, and right now I'm able to get up close to the fence, which sort of indicates to me that for now things are safe in this area. However, as I mentioned, the gas masks are still on. And
CP24's Gurdeep Ahluwalia live on scene, very close to the security fence as the leaders are arriving from the G8 and from other places to gather here in Toronto to be welcomed by Prime Minister Stephen Harper. That has already taken place. The world is watching the city of Toronto, and what a day it's been so far. It is 5:29. Mayor David Miller spoke with us live here on CP24 not too long ago, and expressing his concern about what had happened, and really he was quite angered by the breakaway group of protesters that created all of this violence. And he will be speaking to the media at large coming up very shortly. We had him one-on-one here so that we could bring him his thoughts and his comments as he was feeling them. He will be speaking to all of us again at 5:30, which is coming up in just a matter of moments. We'll bring Mayor David Miller's thoughts to you live as soon as he begins to speak. Stephanie Smythe, new details details, as always, from your desk. You've got your finger on everything that's going on here, and what a fluid situation still. As we say, you know, things may have ramped down slightly, but you just want to keep an eye on everything that's going on. There's still lockdown situations and still inconvenience when it comes to the citizens of Toronto trying to get around downtown.
That's right. And just to do the roundup, Anne, if you're trying to use public transit, if you're trying to use the subway, it is still no subway service between Bloor and University in both directions on the Yonge and the University line. And as you're saying, Anne, that's probably a large reason why you're seeing so many people above ground walking around. Also, no trains in or out of Union Station right now. No GO train service at all in or out of Union Station. To check on the Hospital Row, they're still in lockdown. The hospitals along University Avenue, they still are, though, taking emergency cases. Still, if you are in an emergency, you can go to hospital. Eaton Centre still in lockdown. The Delta Chelsea Hotel in lockdown. We had Toronto Police Headquarters in lockdown. I believe that's lifted now. We have the Sheridan Centre. It was in lockdown. And now we're going to go to CP24's Nathan Downer. Nathan, what's your location?
Hi, Stephanie. I'm at the corner of King and University, and things relatively quiet right here, but there's a huge police presence, a huge line of police officers along King Street. And there's also, you can see the security fence not far from where I'm standing, the yellow zone near the Metro Convention Center, a wall of police officers as well, wearing their helmets, but they're still pretty much at ease. If I look to my north along University, I can almost see the U.S. consulate, and I can see some police officers, some mounted police officers as well. And a little earlier, we were actually in lockdown near Peter and Richmond, not far from where I'm standing. And in this area, I think it was the same situation. But what we're seeing now is civilians, just people who are walking about in this area, they're allowed to move around freely. So we're seeing just people in the area walking on foot, but no cars, no vehicles. I'm guessing that means that cars have been diverted in this area. So it's just a strange sort of scene, Stephanie. Of course, there's no TTC service, no businesses that are open in this area. I don't see any damage, but just people just sort of shaking their heads, trying to sort of grasp what has happened in this city. A lot of people are just very surprised, if not in shock, trying to sort of cope with this. But things are calm where we are. We're behind police lines in a secure spot. Not a lot of action at this moment, but you know, you never know what could happen later. But we're in a good spot, thankfully, and we're keeping an eye on things at the corner of King and University.
Great, thanks, Nathan. And we are waiting Mayor David Miller's news conference that is about to get underway at the International Broadcast Center, the Direct Energy Center inside that secure zone, where all the accredited people are, including our own Stephen Ledrew. Mayor Miller is saying that he's available at 5:30, and he is going to be...
waiting for him to arrive.
Yeah, we're just waiting for him to arrive. This is our live shot inside the International Broadcast Center, where Stephen Ledrew has been broadcasting continuously from that location for the past few days. This is the Media Briefing Center. It's going to be in Theatre 2, where the mayor is going to be speaking to us. And while we await David Miller, I can confirm some things that are on the go for tonight. If you're a Toronto FC fan, that game starts at 7:30, and the game today is going to go ahead as schedule. But they're saying to give yourself some extra time to get down to the stadium. The ACC has a sold-out Andre Rieu concert tonight. A lot of calls wondering about that. That concert is still on. The gates open at 6 o'clock and the show starts at 8. If you also have anything you want to send to us, these are live pictures right now from Queen's Park area. Riot police still in full force there. If you have any pictures you want to send to us at CP24.com and click on My Breaking News, we'd love to see your account of what happened in Toronto today. And Anne Romero, we watched it turn before our very eyes with our cameras on Queen Street and John, where things started to go a little sour, and just a faction of what we call the Black Bloc breakaway group started to we believe caused the trouble in downtown Toronto. This show of force, it appears as riot police are heading on to College Street right now, Anne, and this is down at the Wire, farther south. This is inside the perimeter of the where Gurdeep Ahluwalia is, and we are looking north from this location. That fence, again, keeping the protesters out. So far, there's not been any, we didn't see any huge attempt to break that security line, Anne. And here you have this show of riot police, or police in their riot gear on College right now, securing University Avenue, trying to ensure that protesters do not go any farther south than Queen's Park.
They are making their presence known. That is for sure. Now, a couple of things I want to mention. CP24, of course, bringing you up-to-the-minute information, but also the pictures as they unfold. And our remote hosts are all over our city in the hot spots, the zones that are considered to be those that need to be watched. And we've watched all of this unfold live. We always really, and you mentioned it, we want to hear from you. My breaking news, your pictures. Go to our website for information, but also let us know what you think about what has happened to Toronto today. And we are going to continue to watch this situation. You know, at this very moment, Stephanie, the leaders have gathered for the most part, and there's a big swanky dinner tonight with the lovely first ladies and so on and so forth. And you know, diametrically opposed, a picture like this, where we have our police and police from across this nation armed in riot gear and ready to do whatever they feel they need to do in order to keep this city calm. But we certainly saw a great deal of activity this afternoon, violent. We had our people everywhere and talked to people in Toronto to find out how they felt about this. And we're still waiting for Mayor David Miller. Undoubtedly, traffic a bit of an issue, considering it is tough to get around the downtown core. And if he wanted to take transit, well, he would not be able to, because at this point we are still reporting no subway service south of Bloor on the Yonge and University lines. Staff. So our mayor about to address his city, and we're watching live right now as Toronto police and other forces from across this fine nation are standing at University, just south of College or at College, and we will see what happens next.
And we just want to clarify that Toronto police confirmed to us that tear gas was used, and then they took unconfirmed. They took it back.
Well,
that's good news.
Yes, it certainly is.
And now we're going to go to CP24 special correspondent Craig Kielberger.
Who's right there.
Right there. Craig, they're standing firm there.
Indeed, the police, as you shared, have formed a line on College, creating one single line. So this is very different from what we saw only 20 minutes ago when they were spanned almost the entire length of Queen's Park, creating a giant circle. They're now pulled into what looks to a very easily defendable position, much less tense than earlier at the moment. When the police started to back into this tightened line, people started to chant things like, hey, hey, ho, ho, they've got to go, and na, 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 hey, hey, goodbye. Various teasing chants as the police pulled into this line. It now appears that some of them are moving to disrobe. They're now taking off their helmets. They're replacing them with ball caps or just nothing at all. They're grabbing water. They are not physically leaving at this point, but it is much less tense than only literally a matter of minutes ago. There's still the occasional item being thrown by police, by protesters, still the occasional order by police to back up, but much less tense. Also want to share an interesting fact that we have seen people changing clothes, individuals who have been changing out of black clothes into what we'd call street clothes or regular clothes. And it's important to note this. One can't, of course, jump to conclusions, but important to note this because the majority of the individuals who were smashing the windows and conducting those acts of violence were dressed completely in black. And we've now seen those individuals, or individuals who are dressed in fully black, change their clothes into duffel bags, and now they would be nearly impossible to pick under the general crowd that's gathered to watch everything transpiring.
CP24 special correspondent Craig Kielberger keeping a very experienced eye on what's going on. We look at the mounted unit making its way. We've watched the violent acts committed by some during what was supposed to be a peaceful protest this afternoon. Police have come together in a very big way, and they have gathered at the Queen's Park area, and we are just waiting to see what happens next. We've got Farah Nasser, who is talking to people right now, Torontonians, about what they've experienced today and their thoughts about it. Hi, Farah.
Hi, Anne. Well, first, before I do that, let me just tell you, Queen Street is getting back to normal right now. You can see traffic is going through normal, except for the fact that about 15 minutes ago, we saw 3 busloads of police officers accompanied by some ambulances and other unmarked vehicles just zip right through Queen Street here on Queen Street eastbound. I'm not sure where they were going, but of course, it's probably to ramp up the police presence. I also want to show you the damage to our building here. This is the outside of our eTalk studio, and you saw that at Starbucks, there was, some more cruisers here, some RCMP cruisers just to show you that just came by as well. So I guess maybe I'm wrong. Maybe things aren't back to normal here on Queen Street. Again, this was the damage that we showed you to our building. We also had some damage to the Starbucks across the street and the Scotiabank not far from where we are now. And you mentioned, speaking to people, I have to tell you, it's not easy to talk to a lot of demonstrators. They don't want to talk to the media. A lot of demonstrators not happy with the media. I did speak to one man who came up to me and said, I'm sorry about the fact that the front of your building has been smashed, and just please keep in mind and please convey the message that this does not encompass the view of all of us. We came here to be peaceful. We came here to get our views across about different issues, and this has now hijacked the process, and this is going to be on the front page of the paper, not what we're trying to get across. Also saying that this isn't democracy. The protesters are saying and demonstrators saying they want democracy, but this group that did this did not ask the rest of the group that this is it okay that we're doing this? Is this okay that we're going to be flipping over mailboxes and maybe smashing windows? So these other demonstrators very upset that they wanted this to be a forum for them to get their message across, and it really wasn't.
CP24's Farah Nasser live on Queen Street to thank you for that. And Stephanie Smythe, just a reminder that the city is still in a very strange spot right now, the downtown core, in that the subway system is not running south of Bloor. And that's the Yonge line and the University line. We've got some hospitals in lockdown, Steph. As far as I know, the Eaton Centre is still in lockdown. So it's still a tense time in the downtown core.
That's right, Anne. And we're getting reports from down in Toronto Harbour now as well that boats aren't being permitted to dock anywhere along the south and the waterfront, for that matter, and I'm sure that's all due to G20 security as well.
I hope they knew that in advance.
Yes.
Imagine going out for a 3-hour cruise and not being able to come back in.
Well, as a matter of fact, we're hearing that from someone out on a cruise. Yeah. Lake Ontario. Well, funny you should say that. Yeah. So everything is still very tenuous, and you can see that the police are on guard. And, even with Farah just standing there on Queen Street a minute ago, seeing police cruisers whiz by with sirens on.
Steph, it's all right with you. We've got Maurice Cacho, who's been keeping a very close eye on all the movement on our website, and, incredible pictures sent by you, our viewers, thank you, and listeners, and, Torontonians. We're all in this together. Mo, what are you seeing?
Hey, and well, I've been seeing a lot of pictures. People have been tweeting, putting on TwitPic from the scene, from the various protest sites throughout the downtown core. Let's have a look at them. Here we can see several riot police going up Yonge Street at Queen Street, where the bay is. Just moving along here, this is the looting and trashing of an American apparel store. This is Yonge Street, just at Gould Street, around where near Ryerson University is. And you can see people dressed from head to toe in black, throwing items at the stores and smashing windows. And now you can see the aftermath as various items from inside the store, mannequins, signs, whatever was not firmly secured to the ground has just been spewed across the sidewalk as we continue here. Even more destruction from this American apparel store. This photo, I guess, was from about an hour ago with a lot of police amassing at what looks like Richmond and Spadina. We can see a SUV with police inside, as well as a police truck, and lots of police on foot and on mounted units. And as well, another picture of police here at what I believe is Richmond and Yonge Street, or King and Yonge Street. And then this is another photo. Someone was saying, you know what, a lot of people are criticizing HMV for boarding up because they were saying, why would they board up at Yonge and Dundas? Well, there's no damage there, and their windows are definitely not getting smashed through all that plywood that they installed in advance. Here's another photo of some mounted units going up Yonge Street. And some more police. This is at the BMO building in the financial district. And I think that's all the pictures we have. Yes, that's right. I have one more I want to show really quickly. And this is just the remains of a scarred car that they towed away, the cruiser they lit on fire. Back to you, Ann.
All right, Mo, thank you for that. And we'll talk to you very soon. I want to bring Stephanie Smythe back in on this. And Steph, we began this journey this afternoon, and we began to see thousands of protesters making their way really right over our shoulders in the backyard here at 299 Queen Street West. And we've got Viz just to do a bit of a recap of what has happened this afternoon and what has led to the point where hospitals are in lockdown, as is the Eaton Centre, the Sheraton Centre, the Delta Chelsea Police Headquarters. So let's go back to where we first began to see some violence after a protest that began peacefully turned ugly, Steph. And there's right across the street, Steph, from where we work.
It was right before our eyes and hard to fathom. Yeah. This is what's called the Black Bloc Group, and for any of you who aren't aware, look at that. They are determined.
And masked,
and these are individuals that, as you can see, wear black clothing, scarves, ski masks, motorcycle helmets with padding or other face-concealing items. They often carry some sort of shields or, okay, you know what, Ann?
We've got David Miller, Mayor Miller. So let's go there live to Mayor David Miller speaking to the City of Toronto.
But often the organizers won't distance themselves from those who do come out to seek to commit violence. I was wondering if you could comment on that first off.
Well, I think you'd have to speak to the organizers of today's protest, but I would be shocked if any of them condoned this activity. People have a right to freedom of speech. We're a democratic country, you know, the sad fact is that there are some groups, they call themselves anarchists, I don't know why, I think criminals is a more appropriate name, who use a large event like this to commit violent acts. We have protests every single day in Toronto. You know, walking distance from City Hall, there's almost always a protest at the U.S. consulate. And I put it to everybody in this room to remember the last time a protest turned violent. And you can't find one except for one at Queen's Park about 15 years ago. That's the only one. And the only explanation for this is that these people deliberately use these circumstances. I don't think you can blame organizers of a legitimate protest who are expressing their opinions about the issues of the day for any of that. Somebody didn't like your first question.
No, they didn't. So we'll ask you the second question, and that's the issue of police intimidation. As I'm sure my media colleagues here have done the same, speaking to different protest groups. They've said that the police have been intimidating them, that the sheer number of police officers and the way they've conducted themselves has been intimidating. You say you have full confidence in the Toronto Police Service. Have they behaved themselves? Have they acted in an appropriate manner throughout this?
I think we should be very proud of the Toronto Police Service. I think they do a commendable job. These are difficult circumstances, and I think what we've seen from the torching of the police car demonstrates why the police took very thorough preparations, including being out in significant numbers at the protest. And I think it would be extremely unfair to them to be critical of the number of police out. And in fact, if you listen carefully to Chief Blair over the last couple of weeks, he's been very clear. He said, we will facilitate lawful democratic protest. That is a Canadian value, that's a Toronto value. But he expressed a concern every time he said that about groups who come here just to perpetuate violence. And I think we've seen that his concern was justified. And, you know, I'm sure there have been small moments where perhaps there's some tensions between a crowd and the police, but in the broad brush, I think we should be very confident in their work.
Mr. Mayor, Stephen LeDrew, CP24. I don't think anybody will disagree with your assessment that there are some criminal elements at work. What we're hearing, though, at CP24 from a number of emails and tweets is that people would draw the line when they see cars torched. And they're saying that they saw the cars torched, they saw looting on Yonge Street, and they did not see any responsive police action. Can you comment on that seemingly lack of action?
Yeah, I was asked about that on CP24 as well, and I think people are seeing something different than I'm seeing, and I think people need to put themselves in the circumstances of the police just for a moment. The police have to protect the site where the G20 leaders are. The police are deployed to fairly and appropriately police a demonstration, and a small group of people essentially runs in a deliberate pattern away from that demonstration. Very difficult task to immediately redeploy everybody. And from what I've seen and been briefed, the police are doing everything in their power to respond appropriately. The chief, when I spoke to him about an hour ago, Stuart? About an hour ago, indicated that their response to these activities would be strong.
Thank you.
Claire Siboney from Reuters. Can you say what specific groups have been responsible? You said they came to Toronto to commit acts of violence. Has there been any confirmation on who the groups are?
I will leave that up to the police to say. I've been briefed on the information they have, but I think those answers are better coming from the police. I'm sorry I can't give you better information, but I think it's better from the police because they're the ones conducting the intelligence and are the ones on the street.
Okay, this might be the same case, but there are conflicting reports about tear gas being used supposedly for the first time ever in Toronto. Can you speak to that?
Yes, we've had conflicting reports as well, whether or not it's been used by the police or at all. And I think you should ask Toronto Police Service those questions.
David Ryder from the Toronto Star.
Hi, David.
Hi. Mayor Miller, can you talk at all about the 5-meter rule and how you found out about it, and if, in light of the trouble today, if maybe that was justified, because some people have obviously said it wasn't?
I learned about it by reading your newspaper on my way to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. I think the mistake that was made here was one by the provincial government. They should have followed the appropriate rules and published it. Published it publicly so people knew. That's what you do with regulations. Yeah, past that, I have not reviewed the law myself. I haven't had an opportunity because I have other duties. But I understand from the chief that it's a codification of powers that he believes the police have in any event. And if he's correct, I think that puts that in a little bit of a different light. I do think the Premier should have made sure to publish this, though, so that people knew. And that seems to me one of the two concerns that I've heard from people. There is an issue about free speech, so I think today's events show why the police were erring on the side of caution, and I think we can understand and support them in erring on the side of caution.
And just to clarify, the Premier says everything was done by the book and it was put on a website as any regulatory changes, but you believe that not to be the case?
It was put on a website, you're correct. But normal regulations, people expect them to be published, and this one would be published after it was no longer in effect. And, you know, I understand the challenge the province have, but I think it is the kind of thing that there would have been appropriate to let people know so there could have been comment ahead of time.
Thank you.
Mayor David, it's Dave Trafford at News Talk 1010. The whole issue of sort of doing things by the book is going to be an issue here. And as far as the people are concerned and what they have seen, certainly on television, what they've heard on the radio today, what they will be reading in the papers tomorrow, is that it would appear as though the Toronto police didn't respond as they were going up the Yonge Street, they were smashing windows. They even, you know, assaulted police headquarters. You're going to have an issue here convincing people that the right thing was done today when we saw the city be smashed like that.
I think it's exceptionally unfair to the Toronto Police Service and the RCMP and the other police service from across Canada to second guess what they're doing in the heat of a moment like this. Extensive preparations have been made, as everyone knows. Extensive intelligence gathered. And as I said in answer to an earlier question, Chief Blair was very clear in the run-up to this. And every single time I heard him answer a question about the demonstrations, he always mentioned his concern about those who would come here just to commit violent acts. And I don't think people should underestimate the challenges frontline police officers face on the streets of Toronto when people who are deliberately seeking to commit violent acts use the cover of thousands of people marching. It's a very, very difficult task, and I think second-guessing those efforts today without proper information is exceptionally unfair to the Toronto Police Service, and I'm simply not going to do it.
Is Toronto safe? Can we go downtown tonight?
Toronto's exceptionally safe. Now, I think people should stay away from the area at the core of the protest until the police tell us we can go there. But, you know, let's step back a moment. I think, first of all, people need to be calm and know that everything is being done to catch those criminals and deal with them according to the law. That's very important for people to understand. Secondly, you know, we've had people all over this city, for example, enjoying the World Cup. There is a part of downtown where there's been a very serious incident today that is absolutely unacceptable. But our city is a huge city full of neighborhoods where people are celebrating right now. And that's as it should be. I think people should listen to the police about the core of downtown and be careful. Past that, they should go about their everyday lives.
Okay, Jasmine Sepidas, CBC Radio.
Hi, Jasmine.
Hi. You know, the public has been hearing over and over again, this is the largest Canadian police presence in the country's history, and yet, you know, viewers are saying that police seem to have lost control, even with that amount of police presence here. What's your view on the vision of the view of seeing police lose control of the streets here?
Well, first of all, I don't quite accept that as a premise. But secondly, 3 questions ago, the question was about too much of a police presence. Now, which is it? Are we going to second guess every single thing the police have done? I really don't. I don't think that's a fair characterization of the events. It is absolutely clear that a few hundred people, I don't know if it was 100 or 700, I don't think anybody could tell, but a relatively small group of people deliberately decided to create the mayhem that we saw today. I don't think anybody can question that. We saw it live on television, on CBC, on CP24, on CTV, was live there for everyone to see. There's no question about that. This wasn't a protest in which there was some sort of confrontation. It was a deliberate act by people who seem to make it their business to commit these violent acts. That's something that's very difficult to control, and Chief Blair said that every time he was interviewed for the past 2 weeks. He said that's what his concern was, because people use an event like this as an excuse to commit this kind of violence. And very sadly, that's what we've seen.
Just one more question, Mayor Miller. You have put so much into putting the best face forward for the city of Toronto. Tonight, the world leaders, the President of the United States, all coming to our city, and you know what they're going to see on, it's not going to be the peaceful, you know, beautiful neighborhoods that you had been promoting. What's your reaction to what the leaders will be seeing about the city tonight?
Well, to be clear, what I've been promoting is the fact that Toronto is one of the best cities in the world to do business. We're a low-tax destination. We are a place that has a great workforce that is diverse. People from around the world come here and live together in relative harmony and with social justice. We're a place that has a stable banking system, unlike many of the G20 countries. And we're a place with the highest environmental values, in which we're actually literally leading the world, because I chair the C40, 40 of the world's leading cities. And none of that has changed. Sadly, what we saw today in Toronto happens at these kinds of events around the world. And it doesn't change that our banking system is stable. It doesn't change that we are one of the world's most diverse cities. It doesn't change that we lead the world on environmental issues. Do I wish this never happened? Absolutely. Am I angry? Absolutely. Will this change how the world sees Toronto? I don't think it will at all, and that's probably a sad comment. If you've seen what's happened in some other cities, it's sad, but it's all too frequent that people choose an event like this just to commit violence, which doesn't do any good for any cause, and I don't even think they have one except committing violent acts. Would I prefer it didn't happen? Yes.
That's Mayor David Miller speaking to Toronto Live, condemning the violence today, defending the work of police. A quick word from George Logojanis before we sign off for the moment. George, what's up?
Hi, Ann. Thanks very much. I'm standing right at the south lawn of Queen's Park at the intersection of University and College, and well, things are very, very calm at this moment, but about 5 minutes ago, something resembling and certainly smelling like gas was shot out of a police firearm. One officer stood up from the line that's blocking two rows of officers deep, a line that is blocking anyone from going south of here towards the security perimeter. And one officer got up on top of a mound and shot 3 or 4 canisters into the ground. And I can tell you that it was a very irritating substance. I can't say for sure whether it was tear gas, but it did the job, and it had everyone moving back, and people were quite upset. And the line started to move back towards the police. They began to rattle their shields again, and it has calmed down once again. The sun has come out for the first time today, and it's showing some of the wear and tear on this part of the city as well. In fact, parts of the lawn of Queen's Park are completely torn up. I've seen sections of sidewalks.
All right, George, I have to stop you there, and I'm awfully sorry. We'll talk to you again at 7. Special coverage of the G20 summit and the violent protests that took over the streets of Toronto this afternoon. That's coming up next on CTV News at 6. We are going to be back live with you. Everything you need to know about the G20 summit, the protests this afternoon, and what is still to come, live at 7 o'clock on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
A day of peaceful protest turns violent on the streets of Toronto. Thousands rally as a splinter group causes mayhem. World leaders arrive, but can they be kept safe? Who's been targeted and who now controls the streets just minutes before the summit starts? Tonight, a CTV News special, G20 violence in Toronto.
CTV News with Christine Bentley and Ken Shaw.
Good evening and welcome to a special broadcast of CTV News on our CTV All News channels and CTV affiliates in Western Canada. What was predicted has in fact come true. G20 protesters have welcomed the G20 leaders in their own way.
What began as a large and loud labor march eventually turned into an ugly demonstration of destruction. Buildings have been damaged and police cars burned.
And let's take a look at what is happening right now. You're looking at video from Queen's Park. This is where today's demonstration started about 5 hours ago. CTV's These are live pictures that we are looking at right now. CTV's Naomi Parnas is there. And Naomi, the protest that began at 1 o'clock was far different from what developed.
That's right, Ken. Thousands of people came here for a peaceful protest hours ago. It started around 1 o'clock, but as you can see, we are right now in the thick of things. Things are getting pretty bad here where we are. This is where the protesters have come back up. We're starting to cough a little bit here, so we're thinking that maybe some pepper spray was released. And as you can see, there's a long line of police here. They all have their riot gear out. They're wearing their helmets. And this is what we've seen throughout the city the entire day. They are pushing back the protesters. They're not letting the protesters go south. And we'll just show you a little bit about what's happening here. And I don't know if you can hear, but people are coughing. So obviously something has been released into the air. The protesters are saying right now, shame on you. Let's listen in and see what's happening here.
Oh, I know. I can't see.
We can tell you that police have blocked the protesters from going south. The mounted unit is behind them. We did hear police on a loudspeaker before, which we believe was the long-range acoustic device that's been so controversial in the weeks leading up to the G20 and G8 summits. The police were speaking on a loudspeaker and they were giving directions to the protesters. We were a little too far to actually hear what they were saying. We can now show you the police on horseback are coming in for reinforcement, and you know, scenes like these have been playing out across the city all day today. We've been seeing this. What was a peaceful protest has turned into a very ugly and dangerous situation. People have been torching police vehicles. We've seen a lot of violence in downtown Toronto, windows being broken, a lot of people claiming police brutality. Here we can listen in again to what's happening here as protesters stand off with police. And as you can see, there's
who we are looking at. Naomi, a lot of the folks who we are looking at here, are they in fact protesters or are they onlookers?
A lot of them are onlookers and protesters, actually. As you can see, we're seeing some things being thrown here at police, and something has now been released into the air.
By something released into the air, are you talking about tear gas or are you talking about a projectile?
We're not sure. We just saw a bit of smoke. We're not sure what's been released at this point, but we have been told at this point that there has been no tear gas used by Toronto police. It could have been something thrown by a protester. We've seen that happen numerous times today. Some flares. And again, we'll let you listen in here to the protesters shouting at police.
Now, Naomi, again, we're seeing a variety of people here, but there is one group in particular referred to as the Black Bloc, and maybe you can explain to folks who those people are and what their role has been.
Well, Ken, what we know about them is they're a group of protesters from all across the world who come together at these summits. We've seen them at various summits all around the world, at the various summits that have happened in previous years. And they come to spread a message, but basically we know that they are responsible in many cases for a lot of the damage caused to the city. They come in all black, they're very militant, they're very combative, and we have seen them here today, and we have seen them responsible for a lot of what we've seen. We can't say, but from what we've seen as reporters on the ground, some of the destruction that's been caused today.
Naomi?
There seems to be, Christine, I'm just going to say a bit of calm here. This is what's been happening throughout the whole day. It's almost like the calm before the storm. You know, it's been a very busy day here in the city and a lot of movement. Police have been moving all throughout the city following this protest. The protesters came back to Queen's Park and there was quiet for probably a half an hour. And now it's been this sort of cat and mouse situation where they're running back and forth and the police keep pushing them back. Initially, we right now are in front of Queen's Park, right at the foot of Queen's Park, at College and University. And police were at all four corners of College and University before, but as you can see, they keep moving up and pushing the protesters back.
TSN.